Zoom recording. Okay. So as I was saying, I'm Teresa Cusimano. I'm one of the iCape instructors. I teach the English, English 3, English 5. Sometimes I teach courses in the English department, English 1 and 2, and the ESLP 12, and usually I do ESLP 12 classes. So it's really nice to be here with you tonight. Thank you for joining me again. Like I said, I can see that some of you are repeat offenders, and I'm glad that you keep coming back. This is a positive one. So we'll just go down if you want to introduce yourself to people, for people that have not met you before. Christine, do you want to go first?
Chris Samuel Maynard, and I work at Lehigh in the HR office.
Caroline?
Hi, everyone. I know some of you on this call, so it's nice to see you here. I work in the Office of International Students and Scholars. I'm the Intercultural Programs Coordinator. So I'm excited for this session with Teresa tonight.
And Caroline is going to be our helper. So thank you. Jin Feng.
Hi, everyone. I'm a graduate student in chemical engineering, and I just started this semester, and I really hope that I want to join this class to get my class smoothly for the next semester. Yeah, so happy to see you guys.
Nice to meet you. I see Jin Feng, you're next.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I'm Jin Feng. I'm a PhD student from ECE department. Yeah.
It is nice to see you again. Max.
Hello, I'm Max. I'm a freshman in China. I'm here to try to improve my note-taking skills. So yeah,
Good.
Nice to see you guys.
Oh, I'm kind of flipping through there on accident. Hassan. Nice to see you, Hassan.
Hi, I'm Hassan. I'm from Senegal, Africa. I'm a freshman. I'm a soccer player. And I'm here just to get better, taking notes on class.
If I mispronounce your name, please correct me. I'm trying to do my best, okay? Shen Yu? Did I say your name correctly?
Hello, everybody. My name is Jian Yu, and I'm from China. My department is mechanical engineering and mechanics, and I'm taking this workshop to learn how to take notes. Thank you, everybody.
Nice to meet you. Akari, welcome back.
Hi, I'm Akari. I'm a freshman from Japan, and I'm trying to improve note-taking skills for spring semester.
Nice to see you again tonight. Dharmeek, did I say your name, Dharmeek?
Yeah. Hey guys, this is Dharmeek. I'm actually an MBA candidate. I'm here to improve my note-taking skills, not specifically for MBA, just in general, applying to my life. That's it. Nothing creative or something for academic purpose.
Good. It's nice to meet you.
Thank you.
I'm trying to pronounce your name. Please correct me if wrong. Indranil?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Indranil. I'm a mechanical engineering PhD candidate. It's my second year at Lehigh. I'm here I'm here taking this course to organize my note-taking skills, I would say.
Good. It's nice to meet you. Han Ying.
Hi, this is Han Ying, and I'm a postdoc at Lehigh in the Department of Biological Sciences. And this is my first year here. Well, actually my first month here.
Well, it's nice to meet you. You were in the pronunciation workshop as well, were you not?
Yes.
Okay, thought I recognized your name, yes. And
thank you.
Canon Moy? Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely perfect. Hi, I'm Tonomoy. I am a new graduate student at Lehigh University in Department of Mechanical Engineering. I'll be joining in spring 2021.
Thank you for joining us. Did I miss anyone?
Thanks.
I don't think so. I saw some people were coming in as we were introducing. So if I missed you, please just shout out. I don't mind. Okay, so let's get started because we do have quite a few things to go over tonight, and I want to give you time to kind of practice things, do a little bit of a self-assessment and see where you are right now. So we're going to assess your current note-taking skills and strategies. What are you doing right now, right? And how is it working for you? Then we're going to review the importance of note-taking skills for academic success. And again, it's not one of the most exciting topics out there, but it is a really important topic. And then we will discuss how to prepare for effective note-taking in each class, because it's not just what you're doing in class, it's what you're doing before and afterwards too. What, you know, I can remember my college days of having notebooks and notebooks full of notes. What do you do with them afterwards? You know, if you're just closing that book and sticking it away and coming back in 2 weeks for the exam, that's not the most effective way to do it. And then we're going to learn and practice various note-taking methods. So we're going to focus on 5 of them tonight. There are others that I can, if we have time, I'll mention those to you, but these are the major 5 that we would recommend. And then we are going to just look at some strategies, like I said, to do before, during, and after you're taking your notes. All right, so this note-taking is something that should kind of become part of your daily habit, especially as a college student. So this is one of the things that I think is really important as well, is that sometimes old school is better, right? I sound like my mom, but it's true. So I have linked this in and I will put in the chat for you right now so I don't forget. I'm giving you a copy of the PowerPoint. So in that Google Doc of the PowerPoint, I've linked in this article if you would like to read it after the workshop. But there is research that shows that it's a different process when we're actually writing by hand. I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I mean, I take notes on my laptop and my computer too, especially if I'm rushing and I need to get a lot. But as a student, I sit and take notes by hand. Writing things down, we're processing it, we're being more selective in what we're doing. It's not as passive as it is if you're typing. So this is a really interesting read. Okay, so I would definitely take a minute to look at that. All right, so like I said, I would like to take a minute and put your note-taking skills to the test. So however you're doing it right now, I don't know, if you're using pen and paper, go ahead and grab a piece of pen and paper. If you're doing and taking notes on your laptop, open up a screen because you don't need to see anything, you just need to listen. Right? And let's see how many facts you can get in this 1 minute, it's about 1 minute video. Okay, so I'll give everybody a minute just to get yourself together. And like I said, you're just going to listen. It's very short, but I want to see how many facts can you pull out. I got about 14. So I tested myself. Everybody ready? You're all good? I can't see everybody's faces when we're sharing, so it's kind of hard. Anyone? Okay, anybody that's not ready? All right, let me share my computer sound with you. Give me a moment. I should have done that first, sorry.
Hi, my name is Bill, and I am from the USA because I am married to an English girl. I am in England at the moment. I am 31 years old, and we live in a town, near Liverpool, called Kensington. Well, I don't have a job now, but normally I clean shop windows. As I said before, I am married and I live with my very beautiful wife, Helen, in a nice house in Kensington. We don't have any children, maybe, next year. My wife is an actress, but she isn't very famous. She acts in a small theater in our town. At the weekend, we like to go swimming in a big lake near our house. I normally get up at 7 o'clock, but on Thursdays, I get up early, at around 6 o'clock because that is the day when I go running in the park.
Okay, so I'm going to stop. Let me I want to open it up so I can see the squares a little bit. All right, so how many facts? Take a minute to look over your notes. I got 15. I looked at mine. I got 15 different facts. So I want to see what you got, and let's kind of test how well you were able to capture that information. in that time. And I think he was speaking slower than most professors would speak, right? That's not really a normal rate of speech. So did anyone find out where they are living right now?
In Kensington.
Yes, he's living in Kensington. And is he British?
No, he's from the USA.
Yep, he's American. Okay. What time does he get up in the morning?
7 a.m. on 6 a.m. on Thursdays.
So a couple you had 7 a.m. You got that. Okay. And what does he do for a living?
Cleans and washes windows.
Is that what he's doing for a living now?
No.
No, he's not doing it. He doesn't have a job, he said.
Yep, he's unemployed. So most of you got a lot of the information. And okay, this is not advanced calculus or data science or anything like that that you're listening for. And it's kind of mundane. But you know, you just never know when you're taking notes in a class, like what is going to be the most important thing, right? So this is, what were you doing to take notes? Were any of you, do you have a system, anybody?
I just write keywords.
Yeah, I
Okay.
agree. Yeah.
Writing things down on a piece of paper?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Do you have any of your own little system way to do things? No? Okay. Well, let's go on and let's take a look at some different ways of doing this. So one of the things that I wanted to find out before we begin, and I'm just going to give you a few minutes to talk about it, is that based on your prior experiences, right? And what's going on Zoom right now, what has been the most challenging thing for you to try and get good notes for class and for studying? This is what, you know, I want to take a look at your own behaviors because we have to see what we're doing before we can really go in and make any kind of changes. And we also have to think about one of the things to, you know, to be a better student, better, you know, note taker is to have a plan. So what's working for you and what is not? Okay, so give me a minute and I will create the breakout room. I'm going to do 3 rooms. So that'll just be 4 people in each room. And then I will join one of the rooms as well. Carolyn, you're in room 3.
Are you putting the questions in the chat?
I can do that, yes. Hassan, did you get an invite? I'm muted. So I'm gonna get that tattooed. It's all I say is I'm muted. It takes so long for the rooms to shut down. Either that or you're in the middle of a sentence and your room automatically closes. So I stopped sharing my screen temporarily just because I think it's so much nicer when I'm talking to be able to see your faces, right? And when it's in that little strip, I can't see everybody. So I think this is a little bit nicer rather than when I'm sharing. But I went into room 1, just so that I could be in there with some of you. Did anybody have anything that they wanted to share? Any concerns or issues that they think, I don't know, just what are biggest challenges that you're having? Jinfei, you want to share what you were saying? Because I really think.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay, so I will go first. I think that usually we know how to do the note taking. It's quite simple. We just write down everything that we heard and everything that we think that is a key point. But in lectures, specifically for a professional lecture, if you don't do like the pre-reading for the chapter in the book, you're not going to know what kind of things or keyword that the professor is going to tell you or going to deliver to you. So sometimes you can be very concentrated on for a period and take lots of note taking, but after a while, when you finish the lecture, you find that everything you write down is just some trivial things. That is not the very whole picture, the very main key message that the professor wants to deliver. So then you find out that you just missed that point. You didn't take that note because you wasn't concentrated. Like not everyone can be concentrated for 1 hour or 2 hours. That's impossible. So finding how to listen to the keyword by tracking the emotion, the way that the professor is saying, I think is quite important for me to learn because I am still not very get used to it. That's my problem, I think.
And that's even harder to do over Zoom. So anybody?
Yeah, it is. Over Zoom is really very hard to catch a person's emotion.
It is really hard. Anyone else that had anything? I know, and another thing that somebody had brought up too is not being able to write it down fast enough if it's a new word, right? So if it's unfamiliar words, even if they're, just kind of casual English words, but it's new to you, it can be confusing. So we're going to look at some ways that you can kind of compensate for this, strategies that are going to make it a little bit easier. And I also think too, it gets stressful because I know myself, if I feel like I have to get something and I got to do something, but I'm nervous about doing it, that's not going to help. But if I have a plan, I typically will feel better. So give me one moment. I'm just going to start sharing my screen with you again. I want to just go back for a minute because I want to show you a picture. I thought that this was really interesting because I have literally had students do this in class. I mean, it's kind of hard for you to do now, but there are some times where I am okay if students want to capture a screenshot or something. I literally one time had a girl come up right in the middle of class as I was speaking and she pushed me out of the way. That I am not okay with. Yeah, I was not cool with that. But this is not helpful at all. And I have seen it happen, which is why I put it in there.
I actually do that at conferences.
Taking pictures, yeah, I've done it too, but it's not.
But I'm all the way in the back of the room, so I, try to get this stuff. So
she hip checked me.
I'm sorry.
There's a difference. I was like, what are you doing? So, all right. So why take notes? Right. I mean, this is the most important thing is to know is that it is an important college skill. It's an important life skill. I think, Chris, you mentioned that before, right? notes serve as a file of information, right? It's the storehouse of information of everything that you're doing throughout the semester. I say to my students all the time, classes start next week. Sometimes I feel like I blinked and we're at week 10. So all of that information that you have to now go back with, like I know for my class, it's we do a project that is from the work that we've done throughout the semester. So you need to have those notes. You need to have a record of everything that you've been doing for your finals, even if it's a test that's a month later. A month is a long time to remember things. We discussed that in the pronunciation and in the listening workshop as well, that we only remember, 25% of what we hear, and we only retain that for a very short period of time. So those notes, they serve as a backup, right? So it is a very important skill. Note-taking also, we discussed this in one of the other lectures, is becoming a more active listener and a critical thinker. So in the first lecture that I did on a part of the series in January, we talked about being an active learner, right? Passive listening is what you do while just watching TV. We talked, what you hear around you is passive. We hear it, we know it's there, we may remember hearing it for a while. Active listening is when you actually try to process that information, right? Making connections, linking it to your expectations for the course. So like when you said, if you've done the reading and then you're taking notes and you hear the instructor talking about something that you read the night before, or maybe you heard it in a prior lecture, that's active listening, that's active learning. And by taking notes, you're kind of forcing yourself to do that. So I do think that's an important part of note-taking. And when you're doing that written, I also think it becomes a much more, I think it becomes more active than when you're typing. And I know myself, I type very fast. I sometimes can type without really paying attention to things, but I capture more when I do it by writing. So just give me 1 minute. Let's take a look at this video for a moment.
The average student takes notes at a rate of 1/3 of a word per second. The average teacher speaks about 2 to 3 words per second. Bottom line, if you're trying to copy down everything your teacher is saying while he drones on about Shakespeare, you're going to fall seriously behind. Note-taking is an important skill in and out of school. It can make the difference between passing and failing a test, excelling at a job, or even enjoying a complicated movie. And most of us don't do it well. Welcome to Wellcast. We took a viewer suggestion for this week's episode, the art of note-taking. We're going to give you a 3-step method for taking notes that will actually help you learn. Numerous studies over the years have proven what's already pretty obvious. People who take notes remember the material better than those who don't. But how much better? A 1970 study by developmental psychologist Michael Howe found that students were 7 times more likely to remember facts 1 week after hearing them if they took notes. But here's the thing, most people don't know how to take notes. We're taught from a very young age that when a teacher starts delivering a load of information, for example, Shakespeare described Romeo and Juliet's love as star-crossed, that we should start writing down as much of what they're saying as possible. Phew! Well, this is an incredibly inefficient way to take notes. Why? You're not actually learning anything. You're simply acting as a human audio recorder. A recorder, by the way, that only picks up 1 out of every 10 words. And you're saving the learning for later, when you'll have an even less complete lesson plan to look over. Note-taking should actually act as a form of learning. Something that helps you work your way through the lesson as the teacher is giving it, so that when you leave the classroom, you already understand the concepts. So how do you do that? We have a 3-step method for taking the kind of notes that force you to learn the material inside the classroom and not out. Pause and print this sheet and put it in your binder, ready for your next class. Finished? Okay, let's go. Step 1, don't write down facts. Write down conclusions. Don't worry about capturing every single thing your teacher is saying. Spend more time listening, trying to understand the lecture. When you do start writing, Format your notes as a series of questions posed by the teacher's lecture. Fill in your own answers. For example, question, what is the central theme in Romeo and Juliet? Conclusion, more than being a tragic love story, Romeo and Juliet is about the consequences of deeply held grudges. This way, you're recording the importance of what the teacher is saying and not just raw facts. When you do need to include data, add only the most important points under each question. This is the evidence for each question's answer. Step 2, use colored pens. Yeah, that's right. This will help you remember your notes visually. Also, if you establish a set template for your notes, you'll be able to take them more efficiently. Write questions in red and definitions in blue, conclusions in green. Step 3, review your notes. Don't relearn them. Spend at least 10 minutes
I'm sorry.
organizing your notes after class. If you want to test your comprehension, try teaching the material to a classmate. This will be a great marker to see if you've actually learned anything. Note-taking is a valuable life skill that doesn't lose its utility when you graduate. Find ways to integrate note-taking in your daily life. You'll soon find yourself in the exclusive and creative group of people who bring out their moleskins at lectures, movies, and TED.
So the tip to start taking notes in your daily life is actually kind of important because, let me just go back to my PowerPoint. How do I get back? Close. Trying to exit full screen, exit. Okay. When you do that in your daily life, you're practicing. So just like any skill, if you start getting into a habit of doing it, it does work. And I've noticed myself, I tried doing this because I do try and practice what I preach, but even little things like if I am going to a doctor's appointment, I will forget, right? If there are things that I need to do. I see there's something in the chat here. So if you do that, yeah, bringing a notebook or having, even taking notes on, and again, it's not the most, I'm not saying it's the best thing to do, but I even use the notes on my phone, just keeping those reminders and getting into that habit of writing things down. So that is really important. The idea of color coding, I think, is another really good tip in this video. So if you are a visual learner, we've had workshops where we've discussed learning preferences. When I think we were talking about in the study skills workshop, how to improve your study skills, we talked about knowing what kind of learner you are. So if you're someone who's visual, color coding your notes may be very helpful for you. And it makes things easier to find. I had a system of color coding when I was in college, not necessarily by switching pens all the time, but I used Post-it notes. And I would stick a pink Post-it note in if there was something that I knew was really important. I would tear them sometimes and rip them, and I'd have a whole sheet of Post-it notes. Maybe with studying literature, I had to have maybe which author or a quote from a page if there was something I was looking for, a line that I needed, I would write it on my color coded. So that can be something that's kind of helpful as well. The most important thing here is that you need to find a system that works for you. Even if you're developing your own or taking one of the 5 that we're going to look at and customizing it to make it work for you. Another important thing that I thought in this video was the idea of talking to a friend. If you have a classmate, even if you have a good friend or a significant other that is willing to sit and listen to you talk about your courses, if you could explain it to someone else, you typically are showing that you understand it, right? So if you're going through your notes and you're sharing that information and you can put it into your own words, that is a really great way to assess, one, are there gaps in your notes, things that maybe you missed? And it also kind of gives you an opportunity to work through the information that you have and reorganize it and review it. So, okay, so moving on.
The average student takes notes at a rate of 1.
Be quiet. Please stop me if anyone has any comments or if any questions, please just jump in. So taking notes facilitates learning by forcing you to be an active learner. We talked about that. Having to be a little bit more selective about what you are actually writing down, right? And again, this is where the challenge comes in that was mentioned in the breakout rooms of knowing, well, how do I know what is the most important information? And we will talk about that a little bit. So notes help you remember information. So here is one study that was done that shows you that after a lecture, within 20 minutes, a day, 2 days, and 15 weeks by the end of that semester, this is the amount of information that typically from 47%, I mean, think about it, 15, 20 minutes after class is over, if most people forget 40% or to 50% of what they've heard. So I've done this myself. I've left meetings where I said, what were we supposed to do? Who am I supposed to call? Right? It happens to everyone. What was that next time we're meeting? Where are we going? So this can happen. It's a very realistic percentages, I think. Does anybody disagree with me? Anybody have any comments?
No, I agree with you.
It does happen. Yeah. I know I'm not the only forgetful one. Okay. So how do you get ready to take notes? How do you kind of work through, figure some of those things out, kind of knowing what to take? How can you give yourself an advantage? So you have to prepare to take notes, right? It's more than just going into class and showing up at a desk with a paper and a pen, right? There's things that you need to do to prepare. So classes are starting on Monday. Do you read your syllabi? Honestly, anybody here that does not read the syllabi, nobody's telling in this class what happens here stays here. Anybody that doesn't really read the syllabi all the way through? I take hours to create my syllabi. My brother tells me, you realize nobody reads them. So I guess they do. Your syllabus is very important. It's your contract with the teacher, right? These are the procedures and the rules for this class, but it's more than that. Your syllabus is a really good source of information for you. When you get that syllabus, what are those course objectives? What is it that you are supposed to learn and be able to do by the end of this semester? Right? That's usually right on the very first page of your syllabus. That's important. I know right now what is kind of time consuming. I'm working through my assignment schedule. And I think most instructors this semester, especially since we've shifted online, they are putting their assignment schedules either in their syllabi or they're putting them into CourseSite. Look ahead, read that schedule and find out what topics are we covering, right? My English class, what essay will we be writing first? What are we going to be doing in the third week of class? Because if you know what to expect and you know what topics are coming up, that's going to give you a little bit more of an idea of what you need to pay attention to and what you need to listen to, right? So that is a really important thing that you can do. Noting the major dates, big tests, big assignments, what are the due dates? They're not always in the syllabus, but if you're looking at your syllabi and it says that there's going to be an exam in the midterm, you can count ahead a few weeks and know when that's coming, right? Get yourself a solid guesstimate, right? This way you can prepare for that. Another thing that's really important that I think is very helpful is to determine the correlation between the class and the textbook. So as someone had said, if you're reading the night before and then you hear that information, take notes in your book as well. If you are renting your books, right? Make sure that you can still take notes. You can't write in them, I get that. But again, Post-it notes are cheap. Go to the dollar store. Write your notes on a Post-it note and stick them in that book, right? So that you are annotating and note-taking with the textbook. And then when you go to class, hopefully you can link some of that material. Words are familiar. Content is familiar. Identify the kind of testing that is used in the course, because that's going to be helpful as well. If you can figure out whether it be from, seeing how this instructor quizzes, whether they tell you what type of testing they're going to be doing. If you're taking my course, it's going to be an essay, right? It's an English writing course. Are you going to have multiple choices? Are you going to have short answers? What type of questions will you be getting? Because that's going to affect the types of notes that you take too. I mean, multiple choice, that the information is going to be there. The right one is in there. But if you have to do short answers, practicing and getting ready to take information and knowing that you are going to have to be able to memorize and give facts and details and elaborate on things, right? So these are very different ways of testing. Should notes be very detailed and word for word? That's something you really need to find out from your instructor. And as you get to know your instructor, do you attend office hours with your instructor? If you're taking notes and you think you missed something, we have office hours for a reason, right? So if you find that your notes aren't very detailed, do you need more? You don't know if you got everything. Well, that's what office hours are for, right? Even having another friend in the class that you can compare things with, I think is very helpful too. So if you can have somebody to kind of fill in those gaps, that would be very helpful, right? So ask the instructor even for quizzes and tests. If they're going to be giving a big exam and you know that you need to work with your notes, are there sample questions that you can go to? Often the questions are in a textbook. Often there's a website that you can go to for practices and studying. If you go over into academic services where they're one of the tutoring centers, they may have sample exams for you to take, sample questions for you to look at. And that may help you try and narrow down what type of notes you need. How much information do you need to get? Okay, and I already said this, right? If you can't attend the office hours, does your instructor have a TA? Sometimes they're more accessible. So even if you can get in and speak with the TA, right? Attend any kind of, are there study sessions? Do you have any kind of labs or things like that that you can do with the TA that might be helpful, where you can also fill in some of that information? Sometimes students feel more comfortable approaching the teaching assistant. So that's just an idea to keep in mind. I mentioned finding a class buddy. Listen, you guys can, if you go on chat, even in a class, you can privately message each other in Zoom, right? I don't have to see it. I don't even have to know that students are doing this. I would like you to do it, but I don't have to be monitoring what they're doing, right? You could go behind my back. Sending out a message, just shooting something out there to, if you see somebody in a breakout room, hey, listen, do you guys want, do you want to start comparing notes? Or do you want to try and, meet up and, I don't know, do a study session? You could do that and set that up online. So take that, that opportunity. And then I think this is really important too, clarifying your feelings. How do you feel about a course, right? So I see it in my own students. I see it in my own children, right? If there are courses that they are not enthusiastic about. My one son hates to read, like hurts me, physically hurts me. He hates to read. But I know that when he takes a class, I have to say to him, you know that this is going to be challenging for you, because he's going into it with that attitude, right? So kind of knowing how you feel about something. I said to you how I cringe when I do math. Math gives me anxiety. When I had to take math in college, I was nervous, right? I wanted A's, I wanted to do well, and I knew that that was going to be very difficult for me. So knowing how you feel about a class before you go into it is going to be really important. Knowing how you feel about a topic is going to be really important. Sometimes even knowing how you may feel about an instructor is important, right? So, I mean, we're humans. We have, preconceptions and our own little feelings, but you have to kind of acknowledge those, because if you are bored or you're going into something thinking, oh, this is going to be boring, you're not going to be paying attention. We talked about that in the listening workshop as well. And then adopting a questioning attitude. So Caroline can back me up on this. We've done many workshops on class participation, right? I mean, getting students, encouraging students to participate in classes. We want you to contribute. We want you to ask questions. So part of note-taking too is coming in prepared with some questions. Even if a student has asked me, and I get it all the time, they will come right out and say, is this important? Well, if I'm telling you, it's probably important, right? If I put it on a PowerPoint and I took the time, it is most likely important. All right. So, but these are some of the things that I would, just recommend is going in, even a question of why. Well, can you give us an example? Right. So if I'm taking notes about a concept and maybe I'm not familiar with that word, to ask the instructor, would you mind giving us an example? I'm not sure what that is. So maybe the word doesn't sound familiar, but if they give you an example of it or a comparison to something else, that may be helpful. And then save that example that the instructor gave you, because you may need that, right? If you have to elaborate or explain something. So, any comments or any questions so far? No? Okay. So, I mean, up until this point, what really, I think is the important thing to remember is that it does begin before you get in the classroom, right? How we think about something, how prepared we are, all of those things are important. Just being present is important. And that's something I think that's been reiterated in all of the workshops we've done so far this January. So these are actual note-taking methods. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with any of them. Have you anyone heard of the Cornell method of note-taking? And the outlining method, a mapping method, charting, and then sentences or paragraphs, which I think is what most of you are doing, right? Just writing things down, words, sentences, quick little paragraphs. So we're going to look at these different methods of note-taking. And then at the end, I'm going to give you an opportunity to practice one. So we'll begin with Cornell. Cornell is a very academic type of note-taking. This is a very systematic format of getting notes. It's a great way to do things because it's very organized. We'll look at the advantages and disadvantages, but Cornell, you condense your notes and you break them down. So as you can see, the page is divided, right? So you leave like a 2 or 3 inch section to the left and you write down those main words, terms and things like that, questions that may come up. On the right-hand side, you could see where you could go in and put down important dates, people, places. You're separating your information. You're not just writing one big paragraph and clumping it all in together, right? So if there are formulas or maybe, there are problems that are being worked out on the board, things that you can write down on the right-hand side. And that is what you're actually doing in class. Then that third section at the bottom, that's what you do when you leave. When you get back to your dorm and you're studying, or you get back home and you're studying, now you want to go back in and you want to look at those main ideas, look at those questions that you came up with in class, questions maybe that somebody else asked. And then you try to synthesize that, summarize your notes, link the key words and ideas with the main ideas that were expressed or discussed in the class. All right. And you can, like, again, we said, you may know what the topic is. What is the main idea of today's lecture? That may be in the syllabus. You may be able to go into class with that already prepared for you, knowing what to expect, knowing from the readings, what are some questions that you may have. Okay. Any questions on this? So when can you use this? Cornell is a method that could be used anywhere. I mean, it's very organized, right? It's very systematic. I think it is something that's very disciplined. So if you are very detail oriented and you are a very disciplined kind of writer or, listener, I definitely think it's a good way to go. It's pretty easy. It's literally just drawing a line down the page and a line down the bottom, right? It saves time and effort because you've got things categorized, right? And then it's nice at the end because you do have to go in and take those notes and create a summary. So in that summary, if you're going by the instructor's lecture notes, if your instructor is someone that, uses lecture material on their exams and things later on, that summary is going to be very helpful for you. Not all instructors test only what's from the book. Many of them go and will use content that may not necessarily be in a textbook, but it was discussed in the class. So having those quick summaries with the Cornell method can be very helpful. And again, you bring your summary to their office hours or to your TA, And I'm sure that that would be a good springboard for a discussion or a refresher if you are trying to get some help before an exam. So this is, I think, the outline method is pretty standard. I think most people are familiar with this. Oops, I'm sorry. It's basically what it is. It's an alphanumeric way of outlining, right? So starting with the major, the top topic of the lecture or whatever it is that you're listening to, a video, whatever you're taking notes to, and you would categorize it, break it down by just as if you were writing an essay. What is the main idea? What is the overall umbrella topic, right? And then writing down topics and supporting details and points underneath it, facts, dates, numbers, right? Things like that, names that you need to remember. For the outline method, you don't necessarily need to write full sentences. It's basically, a number and then some points, bullet points that go with it. You are separating and indenting, so visually it does separate the information for you. The only thing I think that I have found very difficult with the outline method is that sometimes you'll hear information at the beginning, and I like to have the most important details, and it's not that I found to be difficult, because once you write it down, you really can't go shifting around. Whereas with the Cornell method, you're giving yourself this opportunity later on to go in and summarize and categorize and classify. So it's really kind of what works for you. This is what an outline method would look like. An outline. I also think it's important, if you notice on this outline method, that this note taker has written the date. That could be really helpful, because if I have a student who's struggling, if you come to me and say, well, do you remember we talked about this? I might not remember, but if you give me a date, I can usually go back through my lesson plans and find what I did on a specific day, right? So sometimes too, just those little details, putting it in there can be very helpful. Any questions? Outlines are not just for writing essays, right? It's a really good way to study too. And if you find that you have a teacher that is going to be giving short answer, maybe where you have to write paragraphs or essay responses for your exams, an outline method might be helpful for you, because you're already setting up those essays or those responses, right? If you're using the outline method, you already are kind of setting up the skeleton of a paragraph. So that might be a good thing to do if you know that you need to write short answers for your test. Lectures, it's a good thing to use then when the lecture is organized and sequential. There is enough time to the lecture to think about and make some organizational decisions. So that's what I meant when I said to you, it can be kind of frustrating if you're creating an outline and you moved on and you didn't leave yourself any room, and maybe the teacher goes back and says something else, and it can get a little messy, right? That's where I feel like the outline method doesn't always work for me. But again, leave yourself room in the margins, just like you did with the Cornell method, right? And then later on, when you go back, try and organize that, okay? It does, again, reduces the need to edit, and you could easily turn main points into questions. So if your teacher is asking for discussion and you have these main points of what they just talked about in class or what you read about in your notes, it's very easy to turn those ideas into questions for you to start discussions and stuff in class as well. So I do think there are some advantages to that. Requires more thought. I already said that. And it does not always show those relationships and those sequences, which with Cornell, you're going to go in and you are going to do that. I've even seen with Cornell where students will use the columns and kind of draw lines, right? These visual lines on the page just to keep those things connected. But you do what works for you. And it's not always helpful when you're going in and you're trying to review things. So I do think that the outline method does have some limitations to what you could do with it. You're not getting, if you're just writing down, maybe some supporting details, some little notes and things, as kind of bullet points, you're not always going to get all the information that you need. Okay, any questions here? No? All right. This one I think is pretty good. And It really depends on the student. I think there's one more. Nope. Okay. So mapping method. Actually, I'm going to show it to you and then I'll go back because I think having an idea of what it is. When I first started using this, I wasn't a fan because I thought it was too busy looking for me. But then later on, I realized that, you know what, there's a lot of flexibility in this. And I've even gotten to the point where I accept this as an essay outline. And I know that sounds crazy because how is that a research paper outline, right? But it really is because it's a working, moving kind of note taking. So it's a, you know, living kind of changing thing. And hear me out. So you start in the middle, right? Where key idea right there in the middle. And then you branch off as different topics come up, sub ideas come up. And for every sub idea, if the instructor adds on another idea, well, you branch off another bubble, more facts. I mean, you could add as many as you want. That's why I think that even though it could get a little overwhelming and sloppy looking, and this is where color coding would definitely be helpful, I do think that this is good. So if you look at over on the left, right, you've got this, whatever the key idea was, I don't know, Romeo and Juliet, and I want to talk about, I don't know, maybe the times and I don't know, custodial relationships during Shakespearean times. I can have that idea over here. Then maybe I want to talk about over here, I want to talk about Shakespeare's theories and his technique and his writing. And that could be another topic over here. So I could go off on a lot of different topics, but just keep adding different examples, facts, dates. You get the point, right? Does it make sense? It's very fluid. That's, I think, a good word for it. So I'm going to go back. So it's just, it's a graphic means of representing information, right? You're drawing your arrows and your bubbles, and each bubble is going to contain a fact. The title of, or the lecture, whatever it is, goes in the middle of the page. It's pretty easy. You put major facts in the subheadings, and in those smaller bubbles where they're little offshoots, those are different facts and ideas, right? And like I said, I mean, I think now I changed my opinion on this because I think, again, that you can continue just adding more ideas and keep putting more information onto that. All right. And even I've seen where students have gone like maybe to the edge of a page. Well, you know what they do? They just add another page and they keep going. Right. So you got page 1 of your notes, page 2 of your notes or whatever. So you kind of build it up. So I've seen where students have done these mind maps and they almost look like a poster in the end because they can keep being built upon. And I always, like I said with the notes in the beginning, they're not meant to be written in class and shoved in a book. The expectation is that you take them back with you and do some kind of summary, some kind of synthesis of the information that you collected in that class. Anybody here that knows they're a very visual learner? That you need to see things broken down? No? I mean, I'm not very visual. I think I'm more of a read-write kind of learner. I like to read things and take notes and stuff, but I do think sometimes that when I can see it in parts, I do think it's helpful. Okay. So when to use it? I mean, I think anytime when the lecture content is well organized, it's going to be helpful taking notes, right? Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. And that's not because the teacher is not organized, but sometimes I can be in a classroom and in the middle of a lecture and a student says something that's really fascinating and it's a teachable moment. I will often go with it, right? Like if I see my students are having a discussion about something and it's important and maybe it's not exactly what I planned on at that moment, but I think it's important and it's relevant, that can kind of, be a little difficult for a student when they're taking notes. This is great. I think if you have a guest lecturer, I've used this with TED Talks is a good way. Listening to a TED Talk might be a good way to try and do this. If you like to cook, if you watch cooking shows or watch cooking videos, using a mind map is a good way to practice steps of what you have to do. Anything where you're listening and you have to remember information later. Okay, so a how-to video. how to make a wreath, anything, right? I tried making a wreath. It was ugly. I tried it. I took my notes and it didn't work. But these are good ways to keep practicing, putting down information. All right. And again, like I said, we talked about in one of the other lectures, are you a visual learner? Are you kinesthetic learner? Are you more oral where you have to hear things? Knowing that your learning type is going to be helpful in choosing a method, right? The disadvantages. As that mind map starts getting busier and busier, and you've got these bubbles kind of floating around, sometimes you don't always see or hear the shifts in content. So when the teacher is moving on to another point, you need to make sure you create another bubble, right? So if you're having difficulty following along, that could be a little bit frustrating if you're trying to do this method. Has anybody seen this before or anybody done it before? Anybody thinks, you know, that would never work for me? No? I
Yeah.
like it. You thinking so, Chris?
Yeah.
Too busy?
Yeah.
Okay. So you like things nice and organized then, like the outline kind of?
I don't see myself doing, you know, the lines and the circles and the, you know, I might do some, you know, some arrows and stuff like that, but I don't see myself doing all that wonderful stuff.
I see some students that do it, and like I said, I wasn't a fan initially, but I've come to accept that for some people it works, right? Yeah.
I'm a mixed learner, so not always visual.
This is another method that I think is pretty handy. And it's something too that you could prepare yourself for, especially if you are taking notes on your computer. Like you can add a chart onto a Word doc very easily, right? Insert columns on a Word doc is very simple. So, or just drawing a chart on a piece of paper. So a charting method is a use of columns with headings. So even if your teacher has a certain way of lecturing, the opening of the lecture, the middle of the lecture, maybe there's, you know, group work during every lecture, because I know I do a lot of group work. And you want to separate your notes for each one of those, or I have a course where we focus part of the course on the writing content, part of the course is on the readings. So charting in that class would be very helpful, right? Charting out which one are we talking about, the composition or the reading and analysis. So setting up categories ahead of time, right? You want to go in there prepared. You can leave yourself room. You can always add another page, another set of lines and columns if you have to. And then placing the information in the appropriate columns. So even answers, even if you didn't hear the question, but you've got the answer and you missed that information, but you know he was talking about, I don't know, photosynthesis of something, right? And you know that, you could go in to the TA, you could go into the instructor and say, when we discussed this, I wasn't really sure what you were asking, and fill in your notes. So just going in with as much information as you can capture and having it in an organized place is really important. And I also think it says something to the instructor when I see students trying to make an effort here. So this is an example. Again, you'll note that this person has the date on their notes, which I think is really helpful. Again, when did we do this? If you come see me, when did we do this? Right? If they're talking about what is the relevance, what are advantages, what are the implications, what are the effects of something? So your column headings could be anything, right? What are the intended outcomes? What are we looking for? It could be anything on your columns. And then you just go in and you jot in information. Again, if you're visual, this is a much neater way of doing it. You could go online and print out your own. If you want to have these little things all made up for yourself, you don't even have to do anything. Create your own little notebook. Okay, so it's a good method to use when you are jotting down facts, right? If you need to create relationships, it's very easy to column and cross-reference things when you have them in a chart like that. Put them in some kind of break it down into some kind of a matrix. It's great for studying if you want an overview of something, maybe questions that you will be quizzed on, right? Things like that. Equations that you are going to need to know. If you can write the equations down and put them into maybe a chart or something like that. Steps in an equation that you'd have to work out. So it is a good use for studying, and having someone else quiz you to say, ask me what's in column 1, right? To see, cover up the answers in column 2 and quiz yourself, right? So it can be helpful later on. You don't need to do a whole heck of a lot of writing because you're taking quick notes and fitting it into those boxes, right? Like I just said, it's an easy way to review things. And it is good for when you have to try and memorize. So if you're someone that likes to study with cards, you know, like my daughter uses Quizlet a lot, right? She takes notes and puts them on Quizlet for psychology. And this is a great way to do that because you could just very easily go in and create little snippets of information, comparing and relating. Disadvantages are, yeah, you've got to start effectively creating these categories. So you do need a little bit of pre-planning. And then while you're setting up your chart and labeling all your columns, are you paying attention to what's happening in class? Because that could be totally counterproductive. You're trying to create this beautiful chart and you're missing everything the instructor's saying. It's kind of pointless. Am I right? Yes, I'm right. Okay. So this is another way, and this is, I think, what most of you are doing. And that's okay. It's called sentence paragraph method. It's where you are creating, going in, and you write down the topic, whatever the teacher's talking about, and you try and create sentences. It is good. It's a good method when you need to define a topic, right? So if you know that there's something you're going to need to learn, right? So the sentence method, if I wanted you to learn, what is the writing process? And I said, there are 4 steps in the writing process. You know your topic is going to be the writing process, and you need to capture those 4 steps, right? So this is a good way to do that. Where I do think it becomes a challenge again is when you move on to another topic and maybe you see something that you need to put in the first topic, your notes can kind of get all messed up. So I do think that, you know, can be a little frustrating too. So, but it's basically exactly what I think you guys are doing. Writing things down, mostly in sentences. Am I right? Is that what you're doing? Okay. I mean, it's a solid method if it works. That's the thing, is if it's working. And the most important thing then, what I would say for you from this lecture is learning, what are you doing before you do the sentence paragraph method, and what are you doing after it? And where are you storing these notes? Right? Are you the type of person that's going in, asking the guy next to you, do you have a piece of paper, and then shoving it in a book somewhere? Hey, listen, I've seen it all. I see you laughing, but I've seen it. I've had students come to me, do you have a pen, right? It defeats the purpose, right? So even if you're using this method, what are you doing before? Okay, and then we're going to look at some other things that are important with it too. Any questions, any comments? No? Okay.
No.
So when to use? The sentence method is great when the lecture is organized, right? Just like anybody else when it's organized. When there's a lot of content and it's coming at you very fast, sometimes you don't have time to think about columns and bubbles and everything else. So when you need to capture information and you're just jotting it down in a lines, you can go back and organize that later, right? You're kind of listing. That's basically what you're doing, is you're listing. And then later, you know, one of the advantages too is I think you get a lot more of the information there, and then later you just have to go back and organize that. And the thing is to become disciplined and get into that, you know, those study skill habits that we talked about in workshop number 1 of actually going back and doing it. Don't leave it for 4 weeks, because you're going to look at that piece of paper and not remember who goes with what. So, like I just said, It can be difficult to determine major points from minor points and going back and trying to sequence all that. And difficult to edit without having to totally rewrite the whole thing, right? With the chart method, you could add information in, get yourself a nice little thing of whiteout and maybe takes a little thing, some stuff out. But with the sentence method, it can get a little bit confusing. So now I don't want to do the practice first. I'm going to skip this for a minute. I think that I want to go back to that because of some of the things that you said in the breakout rooms. Okay, and I know I've been talking for a few minutes, but I do think that this is more important because I think it's more germane to what you guys brought up. All right, so knowing what to note, how to recognize and record the important stuff, right? So before I make you do practice, I really kind of want to talk about that quickly. And I know we're getting at the end, so what I'm going to do is give you the video to practice it on your own. Okay, because I know we're getting right to the very end. The hour goes so fast. Okay, looking for things in the language that the instructors would do. Typically, an instructor will pause before there's an important idea. You may notice that they take a pause or a minute. They're giving you a minute to prepare, right? Noticing what's on that PowerPoint. That's important too. And then, is the instructor using repetition or emphasizing? So we talked about in pronunciation that intonation and stress, listening to how they speak. And I think, Junfei, I think that's what you were talking about, right? Listening to the tone and listening to the, how the instructor is speaking. Almost like their mood in a way. Mark ideas that are emphasized in a lecture with an arrow, right? So if you read about it and you have notes from your reading, don't go and rewrite that. Have those notes next to you and put a star or an arrow next to them. Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't do it twice, right? Taking down examples and make sure you write EX or IE next to them so that you know this was the instructor's example. And then paying close attention for transitional words and phrases. That's really important. And on this PowerPoint that I just gave you, I'm going to give you a whole list of them to look through. There's signal words. So, even when we're writing, I always tell my students, you have to signal for the reader. Well, in speaking, we call them signposts. Right? So you're signposting where is this conversation going? Where is this lecture going? Most instructors will use some kind of an introductory phrase, right? This is a point to remember. Something I want you to think about, right? I mean, sometimes it's even very blatant. This will be on the test. So listening for those things can be really important. These are some common signal words. All right, and again, this is all on that slide, but learning what to listen for as you're taking notes is going to be really important. In conclusion, as a result, right, now this is important, a major development. So listening for that intonation, listening for what they're stressing, and then listening for those transitional words and phrases. Does anybody notice that the teacher, even in any of your classes, do you notice that this is happening? Do you use that as part of the signals for when you are trying to take notes?
Yeah, lots of mine do the first, second, third thing, or finally, or, this is going to be on the test. And
then finally, just quickly, right? Concentrating on the lecture, not on reading what's in the book, trying not to read the PowerPoint. You can always ask your instructor for the PowerPoint. I would never say no to a student. I'd pop it up in CourseSite if I had to. Maybe I don't want to give you a printout, but I'll put it in CourseSite, right? Take notes selectively, trying not to write down every single word. You're not going to do it. It's just not going to happen. So don't try to. And then using your own words. If you don't recognize, I think Junfei, I think you were the one that said that if you don't recognize the word, well, if you don't know what that word is, don't sweat it. Use your own. Write it phonetically, right? Do whatever you got to do. Just get it down on paper. You can always go back and confirm what it was later. And then creating your own shorthand. Little marks and little things that you might not know, right? things like that. So for a word, so if instead of what writing process, WP, quick notes, things that you can get in there and do it quickly. And then we said color coding, focusing on major points, write legibly because I've done that where I can't read my own handwriting, right? And don't worry about grammar or spelling. It's not being handed in as a test, right? It's not here. You're not being judged on that. So these are things, don't sweat. It doesn't have to look pretty. That's not what we're going for. All right. So I am going to put this into the chat for you. And let me just give it to you in case anyone has to go. And if anyone has any questions or comments about anything that I went over today, I'm going to stop sharing. Like I said, I gave you the full PowerPoint, and in that PowerPoint is a TED Talk. And he talks about changing your habits, all these different things that you could do to change, try something new for 30 days. It's a 2-minute TED Talk. Watch it and practice one of the note-taking. It's really interesting anyway, right? Like my challenge was, for 30 days, no sugar, right? So I'm going to try it. That was one of the things that I got from him. But you might learn something new. Oh, where'd my camera go? I came back in and my video went out. You might learn something new and also be able to practice what we showed you. Anything in there that you just think is now practical, you would never do it? Anybody? No? Remember, not everything is going to work for everyone. These are just tips, ideas, different methods. All right. If you have any questions or you have thoughts after the workshop, you could always email me. My email address, I'll put it on the top of the slide for you so you have it, and I'll put it in the chat for you now. I'm always happy to answer questions later on. Okay. And now someone else here had written in their comments that they were interested in citation workshop, that one of the things they hoped to get from the notes was how to improve their citations. If you are that person, because I don't remember who it was on the sheet, there is going to be a citation workshop on Tuesday at 7 a.m. Okay, I saw that, Max. He's like, 7 a.m. So, all right, but there is going to be another workshop that's focusing specifically on citing. Okay, all right. You have the Google survey. I will stick around if anyone wants to hang out and just ask me a couple of questions, but thank you all for joining me tonight. Okay, it was nice seeing you.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good night. Have a good morning if you are in.
Bye-bye.
Some of you
Bye-bye.
morning. Bye.